Sarah Mitchell sat in her second period math class staring at her phone under her desk. Her heart was racing as she read the email for the 5th time that morning. Her older brother Jake was coming home. After 18 long months overseas, he would be back in just 3 days. She wanted to jump up and scream with happiness, but she stayed quiet. That's what Sarah had learned to do at Riverside High School. Stay quiet. Stay invisible. Don't draw attention to yourself. It wasn't always like this. 3 years ago, before the accident that killed her parents and left her in a wheelchair, Sarah had been different. She had friends. She laughed loudly in the hallways. She joined the drama club and tried out for the school musical. But everything changed after that rainy night on Highway 42. Her parents died instantly. Sarah survived but lost the use of her legs. She went to live with her grandmother in their small town of Riverside, while Jake finished his military training and got deployed overseas. Now, at 16, Sarah had learned to navigate a world that wasn't built for her. The old building had ramps, but they were steep. The elevator broke down at least twice a month. Some teachers forgot to leave space for her wheelchair in their classrooms, but Sarah adapted. She always adapted. What she couldn't adapt to was Tyler Brooks. Tyler was the kind of guy who seemed to have everything. He was the quarterback of the football team, tall and athletic with the kind of confident smile that made teachers trust him automatically. His father owned Brooks Automotive, the biggest car dealership in 3 counties. His mother was on every charity board in town. Tyler wore expensive clothes and drove a brand new truck that cost more than most families made in a year, and Tyler Brooks had decided that Sarah Mitchell was his target. It started small about 2 months ago. A comment here and there. "Watch out, guys, wheelchair coming through," he'd shout in the hallway, making everyone move aside like she was some kind of vehicle instead of a person. His friends would laugh and Sarah would keep her head down and keep moving. Then it got worse. He'd kick her backpack off the back of her wheelchair when she wasn't looking. She'd hear it hit the floor and have to ask someone to pick it up for her, which was always humiliating. Once he accidentally spilled his sports drink on her lap, right before an important presentation. She had to give the entire speech with a huge wet stain on her pants while people giggled. But Sarah never reported it. She couldn't. Tyler's father employed half the town, including her grandmother, who worked as a receptionist at the dealership. One wrong move, one complaint that made the Brooks family look bad, and Grandma Rose could lose her job. They'd lose their house. Sarah would lose the only family she had left until Jake came home. So she stayed quiet and hoped Tyler would get bored and move on to someone else. That hope died 2 weeks ago when Tyler's girlfriend, Madison, got caught cheating on a chemistry exam. Somehow the blame landed on Sarah. Madison claimed that Sarah had tutored her and given her the wrong answers on purpose to make her look stupid. It was completely insane. Sarah had never tutored Madison. She'd never even had a full conversation with the girl. But Madison was pretty and popular, and her story spread through the school like wildfire. Tyler believed his girlfriend, of course. Or maybe he just pretended to believe her because it gave him an excuse to make Sarah's life even worse. Either way, the last 2 weeks had been torture. Tyler and his friends would surround her wheelchair in the hallway, blocking her path until she was late to class. They'd make beeping sounds like a truck backing up whenever she moved. Madison would post mean comments on social media, and her followers would pile on with laughing emojis and cruel jokes. Sarah's only escape was thinking about Jake coming home. Her big brother had always protected her when they were kids. He was 6 years older, strong and brave, everything Sarah wished she could be. When their parents died and Jake had to leave for the military, he'd made her a promise. "I'll come back, little sis," he'd said, hugging her in her hospital bed. "And when I do, everything's going to be okay. I promise." Sarah had held on to that promise for 3 years, through physical therapy and surgeries, through moving to a new school where everyone stared at her wheelchair, through lonely nights when she missed her parents so much she couldn't breathe, through every day of Tyler's bullying. Just 3 more days, she told herself as the bell rang for lunch. 3 more days and Jake would be home. She gathered her books and started wheeling toward the cafeteria. The hallways were crowded as always. Students rushed past her, some bumping into her chair without apologizing. She was used to it. The cafeteria at Riverside High was like any other high school cafeteria. The popular kids sat near the windows where everyone could see them. The athletes had their own section. The band kids clustered together near the vending machines. and Sarah sat alone at a small table in the back corner, near the emergency exit. It was strategic, really, close enough to the exit that she could leave quickly if she needed to, far enough from everyone else that she didn't have to listen to their conversations about parties she wasn't invited to and football games she couldn't attend because the bleachers weren't wheelchair accessible. But as Sarah wheeled into the cafeteria that Tuesday, something felt wrong. Students were whispering and looking at her. Some had their phones out already, like they were expecting something to happen. A few girls from her English class looked at her with pity, which was somehow worse than the staring. Sarah's stomach dropped. She knew that look. Something bad was about to happen. She tried to wheel toward her usual table, but someone stepped directly into her path. She looked up and her heart sank. Tyler Brooks stood in front of her, blocking her way. His friends Connor and Brett flanked him on either side. Behind them, Madison stood with her arms crossed and a mean smile on her face that made Sarah's blood run cold. "Well, well, well," Tyler said loudly, making sure everyone in the cafeteria could hear him. "Look who decided to show up. The girl who thinks she's too good to apologize to my girlfriend." Sarah gripped her wheelchair's armrest tightly. Her hands were shaking, but she tried to keep her voice steady. "I didn't do anything to Madison. I've never tutored her. I've never even talked to her about chemistry. Are you calling my girlfriend a liar?" Tyler leaned down, getting right in her face. His breath smelled like energy drinks and the protein bars he was always eating. "Because that's what it sounds like to me." "I'm saying there's been a mistake," Sarah replied, keeping her eyes on his even though she wanted to look away. "I don't know where Madison got that idea, but I didn't help her cheat." Madison laughed, a high-pitched sound that made several students nearby laugh too. "You know what your problem is, Sarah? You think you're special because the school had to put in ramps and elevators just for you. You think you deserve special treatment?" "I don't think that at all," Sarah said quietly. She could feel tears building behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Not here. Not in front of everyone." Tyler straightened up and looked around the cafeteria. By now, almost everyone had stopped eating. They were all watching, waiting to see what would happen next. Some had their phones up, recording. Sarah's stomach twisted with fear. "You know what?" Tyler said, grabbing the handles of Sarah's wheelchair from behind. "Maybe Madison's right. Maybe you've been getting special treatment. Maybe it's time someone taught you a lesson about gratitude." Before Sarah could react, Tyler started pushing her wheelchair. Not toward the exit. Not toward her usual table. Toward the center of the cafeteria where everyone could see. "Tyler, stop." Sarah tried to grab the wheels to slow down, but Tyler was too strong. Connor and Brett walked alongside them, making sure no one interfered. Sarah looked desperately toward the lunch monitors, but the two teachers on duty were at the far end of the cafeteria. By the time they realized what was happening, Tyler had already pushed Sarah into the middle of the room. He spun her wheelchair in a slow circle, presenting her to the crowd like she was some kind of circus act. "Everyone, let's give Sarah a big round of applause for making our school spend thousands of dollars on special equipment just for her." Some students clapped mockingly. Others looked uncomfortable but didn't say anything. A few looked away entirely, pretending they didn't see what was happening. Sarah felt her face burning with humiliation. This was worse than anything Tyler had done before. This wasn't just mean comments or knocked over backpacks. This was public degradation, and everyone was watching. Then Tyler let go of her wheelchair and stepped around to face her. There was something dangerous in his eyes now, something that made Sarah's heart race with genuine fear. "What's wrong, Sarah?" he asked loudly. "Having trouble moving?" That would be really ironic, wouldn't it? Before Sarah could answer, Tyler lifted his foot and kicked one of her wheelchair's wheels hard. The metal crunched sickeningly. Sarah gasped, gripping the armrests as her chair tilted slightly. Around them, students pulled out their phones, recording everything. Some were laughing. Most were just watching in shocked silence. "Tyler, stop it!" a voice came from somewhere in the crowd. Sarah recognized it as Emma Rodriguez, a quiet girl from her English class. "You're going to hurt her." "Mind your own business, Rodriguez," Brett snarled, stepping toward Emma threateningly. "Unless you want problems too." Emma's face flushed red, but she fell silent. Sarah wanted to thank her for trying, but she couldn't speak. She was frozen in horror as Tyler circled her wheelchair like a predator. "This is what happens," Madison announced, holding up her phone to record. "When people lie about me. Actions have consequences, Sarah." Tyler kicked the wheelchair again, harder this time. Something inside the wheel mechanism broke with a sharp crack. The chair tilted further, and Sarah had to grab the armrest with both hands to keep from falling out. Around them, the cafeteria had gone completely silent except for the sound of phones recording. 300 students were watching Tyler Brooks destroy Sarah Mitchell's wheelchair, and not one of them was doing anything to stop it. The third kick was the worst. Tyler put his full weight behind it, and Sarah heard the metal frame of her wheelchair actually snap. The whole chair lurched to one side. The broken wheel twisted at an unnatural angle. Sarah's body pitched forward, and for a terrifying moment, she thought she was going to fall out onto the hard cafeteria floor. She managed to catch herself on the one armrest that wasn't damaged. Her knuckles white from gripping so hard. Her heart was pounding so loud she could hear it in her ears. Around her, the phones kept recording. Madison was laughing. Tyler's friends were high-fiving him, and Sarah realized with crushing certainty that no one was going to help her. Not the students who were filming for their social media. Not the ones who looked uncomfortable but stayed silent. Not even the teachers who were only now starting to push through the crowd, moving far too slowly to matter. "Oops," Tyler said with fake concern, looking down at the destroyed wheelchair. "Looks like I broke it." "That's too bad, Sarah. Guess you'll need to call someone to come get you." He leaned down close to her ear, his voice dropping so only she could hear. "Maybe your grandmother can leave work early." "Oh wait, that's right. She can't afford to miss even an hour of work, can she? Not if she wants to keep her job at my dad's dealership. Better hope she doesn't get fired for having family problems." The threat was crystal clear. This wasn't just about humiliating Sarah. It was about reminding her exactly how powerless she was. The Brooks family controlled this town, and everyone knew it. Tyler straightened up and looked at his friends. "Come on, guys. We're done here." They walked away laughing, leaving Sarah stranded in the middle of the cafeteria in her broken wheelchair. The crowd of students slowly began to disperse, the show over. Some were already posting videos online, adding hashtags and comments. Sarah caught glimpses of screens showing her face frozen in shock and fear. Finally, 2 teachers reached her. Ms. Chen, who worked in the front office, and Mr. Palmer, the assistant principal. Ms. Chen's face was full of sympathy, but Sarah could also see resignation there. She'd been teaching at Riverside High for 15 years. She knew how things worked in this town. "Sarah, honey, are you hurt?" Ms. Chen asked gently, kneeling beside the ruined wheelchair. Sarah shook her head. She didn't trust her voice right now. If she tried to speak, she would cry, and she refused to give Tyler that satisfaction. "Let's get you to the nurse's office," Mr. Palmer said. He was a big man, and he carefully lifted Sarah from the broken wheelchair and carried her like she weighed nothing. Ms. Chen followed, pulling the destroyed chair behind them. The walk through the hallways was humiliating. Students stopped and stared as Mr. Palmer carried Sarah like a child. She kept her eyes straight ahead, refusing to look at anyone. Behind her, she could hear the squeaking of her broken wheelchair's one remaining wheel dragging on the floor. The nurse's office became Sarah's prison for the next few hours. Mrs. Patterson, the school nurse, helped Sarah onto the examination table and gave her water. The broken wheelchair sat in the corner like evidence of a crime that everyone saw but no one would prosecute. "I'm calling your grandmother," Mrs. Patterson said quietly, "and Principal Hendricks wants to speak with you." Sarah nodded numbly. Her phone was buzzing nonstop in her pocket. She pulled it out and immediately wished she hadn't. Madison's video was everywhere. It was on Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. The hashtags were already trending locally. "Your wheelchair fail," "Our karma works," or "Our special treatment." The comments were brutal. Some people were defending her, saying Tyler had gone too far, but more were laughing, making jokes about watching where you're rolling and saying she deserved it for lying about Madison. A few comments made her stomach turn. "Why do we even let disabled kids in normal schools? And my tax dollars paid for those ramps, and this is how she acts?" Sarah closed her phone and stared at the ceiling tiles, counting the little holes in each one. It was better than thinking about what had just happened. Better than thinking about how her grandmother would have to leave work early, just like Tyler predicted. Better than thinking about how they couldn't afford a new wheelchair. Principal Hendricks arrived 20 minutes later. He was a thin man in his 50s, who always wore expensive suits and had the kind of smooth, diplomatic smile that politicians practiced in mirrors. Sarah had only spoken to him once before, when she'd first transferred to Riverside High. He'd promised her that the school would be fully accommodating to her needs. Looking at him now, Sarah realized those had been empty words. "Sarah," he began, sitting in the plastic chair beside the examination table, "I want you to know that I am deeply sorry about what happened today. What Tyler did was completely unacceptable, and there will be consequences." For a moment, hope flickered in Sarah's chest. "So you're going to expel him?" Hendrik's smile didn't waver, but something in his eyes shifted. "Well, we need to look at all the facts first. I've spoken to Tyler, and he maintains that it was an accident. He says he was trying to help you move your chair when things got out of hand." Sarah sat up so fast she nearly fell off the examination table. "An accident? Principal Hendricks, he kicked my wheelchair 3 times, while his friends held it still. While 300 students recorded it. How is that an accident?" "I understand you're upset, and you have every right to be," Hendricks said in that same smooth, calm voice. "But we have to consider all perspectives. Some students have told me that there was a confrontation, that words were exchanged, that perhaps both parties escalated the situation." "Both parties?" Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. "I was sitting in my wheelchair. Tyler pushed me into the middle of the cafeteria and destroyed my wheelchair while everyone watched. What part of that did I escalate?" Hendricks shifted uncomfortably. "Sarah, please understand my position. The Brooks family is very influential in this community. Mr. Brooks sits on the school board. He's donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to our sports programs, our computer lab, the scholarship fund. If we take drastic action against Tyler without absolute proof that he intended to cause harm, there are hundreds of videos." Sarah's voice was rising now, tears finally starting to fall. "Everyone saw what he did." "Yes, and I've watched those videos," Hendricks said, his diplomatic mask starting to slip. "And what I see is a situation that escalated quickly. Tyler admits he used poor judgment. His parents are willing to pay for repairs to your wheelchair. Tyler will face suspension." "Suspension?" The word came out as almost a laugh. "He destroyed medical equipment I need to move. He assaulted me in front of the entire school. He threatened my grandmother's job. And you're going to suspend him for a few days?" Hendricks stood up, clearly eager to end this conversation. "I will do everything within my power to address this situation appropriately. But I need you to be realistic about what that power is, Sarah. This is a small town. The Brooks family has deep roots here. Sometimes we have to make difficult choices about what battles we can actually win." After he left, Sarah sat in silence. She understood now. It didn't matter what Tyler had done. It didn't matter that hundreds of people had witnessed and recorded his attack. What mattered was money and power, and the Brooks family had both. The broken wheelchair in the corner seemed to symbolize everything wrong with Riverside. Beautiful and functional on the surface, but broken at its core when you looked too close. Her grandmother arrived an hour later, her face pale with worry. Grandma Rose was 68 years old. With gray hair she kept in a neat bun and hands that trembled slightly from early-stage arthritis. She worked 40 hours a week answering phones at Brooks Automotive, even though she should have been retired years ago. She did it so Sarah could have a home, so they could pay the medical bills, so they could survive. "Oh, sweetheart," Grandma Rose whispered, pulling Sarah into a tight hug. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." "It's not your fault, Grandma," Sarah said into her shoulder, finally letting herself cry for real. "The wheelchair's under warranty, right?" Grandma Rose asked hopefully, pulling back to look at Mrs. Patterson. The nurse's expression was sympathetic but grim. "Unfortunately, warranties don't cover intentional damage, and insurance won't cover it either unless Sarah files a police report specifically naming Tyler as the person who destroyed it." The implications of that hung in the air. Filing a police report meant officially accusing Tyler Brooks. It meant taking on his family. It meant Grandma Rose would almost certainly lose her job. It meant they might lose everything. How much will a new one cost? Grandma Rose's voice was barely above a whisper. Depending on Sarah's specific needs and the customization required, probably between $15,000 and $20,000, maybe more. Sarah watched her grandmother's face crumble. They didn't have $15,000. They didn't have $5,000. They lived paycheck to paycheck, and most of those paychecks came from the Brooks family. "We'll figure it out," Grandma Rose said, but there was no conviction in her voice. "We always figure it out." The school found an old wheelchair in storage that they loaned to Sarah. It was a basic transport chair, the kind hospitals use to wheel patients from their rooms to the car. It was too small for Sarah, uncomfortable, and required someone else to push it. She couldn't move herself at all. That night, lying in bed, Sarah pulled out her phone again. Madison's video had gone viral in their small town. It had thousands of views, hundreds of comments. Wheelchair fail was the #1 trending topic in Riverside. She scrolled through the comments, each one a little knife to her heart. People she'd gone to school with for years, people she'd thought were decent, were laughing at her humiliation. Some were defending Tyler, saying she must have done something to deserve it. Others were sharing the video with their own cruel commentary. Sarah thought about Jake's email from that morning. 3 more days, he'd said, but what could he do that she couldn't? Her brother was brave and strong, but he couldn't change the fact that the Brooks family ran this town. He couldn't make Tyler face real consequences. He couldn't magic up $20,000 for a new wheelchair. For the first time since her parents died, Sarah wished she could just disappear. To not exist at all would be easier than existing like this, powerless and humiliated, in a world that valued money over justice. Her phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Jake. Something came up. "I'm catching an earlier flight. I'll be home tomorrow, little sis. Can't wait to see you. Hang in there." Sarah stared at the message for a long time. Tomorrow. Jake would be home tomorrow. She wanted to feel happy about it, but she was too numb, too broken, too tired of hanging in there when there was nothing to hold on to. She turned off her phone and closed her eyes, not because she thought she could sleep, but because she couldn't stand to look at the ceiling anymore. Tomorrow her brother would come home and see what had become of his little sister, a girl too scared to fight back, trapped in a borrowed wheelchair in a town that valued money over what was right. Tomorrow Jake would come home. And Sarah had no idea how to tell him that his promise, that everything would be okay when he returned, was a promise that couldn't be kept. Jake Mitchell's flight landed at 6:47 a.m. at the small regional airport 40 minutes outside Riverside. He'd been traveling for nearly 20 hours, catching military transports and then a final commercial flight, but he wasn't tired. The closer he got to home, the more energy surged through him. 18 months. He'd counted every single day, through desert heat and freezing nights, through missions he couldn't talk about and moments he wanted to forget. The thought of seeing Sarah again had kept him going. His little sister needed him. Their grandmother needed him. He was finally coming home to be the big brother he should have been all along. He texted Sarah from the airport. "Landed early. Getting a rental car. See you in an hour. Don't tell Grandma, I want to surprise you both." The drive through familiar roads felt surreal. Everything looked exactly the same. The old gas station on Route 7, the diner where they used to get pancakes on Saturday mornings, the water tower with Class of 2019 spray-painted on it. But Jake had changed. The military did that to you. You left as one person and came back as someone else. He pulled into the driveway of his grandmother's small house at 8:15 a.m. The grass needed mowing. The paint on the shutters was peeling. Jake made a mental note to fix both things. He was on terminal leave for the next month before his next assignment. He'd have time to help around the house to make sure Grandma Rose didn't have to do everything alone. He used his old key to let himself in quietly. The house smelled like coffee and the lavender soap Grandma Rose had used for as long as Jake could remember. He could hear the TV in the living room playing morning news. "Grandma?" he called out softly. There was a gasp, and then his grandmother appeared in the hallway, her hand over her heart. "Jake, oh my Lord, Jake!" She rushed to him, and despite being a head shorter and 80 pounds lighter, she wrapped him in a hug that felt like coming home. Jake closed his eyes and held her, feeling some of the tension from 18 months of deployment finally start to ease. "You said 3 more days," Grandma Rose said, pulling back to look at him with tears in her eyes. "I didn't make your favorite cookies or anything. I don't need cookies, Grandma. I just needed to be home." Jake looked around. "Where's Sarah?" "Still sleeping?" Something shifted in his grandmother's expression. The joy drained away, replaced by worry and something that looked like guilt. "She's in her room. Jake, there's something I need to tell you before you see her." The next 10 minutes shattered Jake's homecoming joy into pieces. Grandma Rose explained everything while Jake sat at the kitchen table, his hands clenched into fists that made his knuckles white. She told him about Tyler Brooks and the months of bullying, about the wheelchair destroyed in the cafeteria, about the videos going viral, about the school's refusal to do anything meaningful. About the cost of a new wheelchair they couldn't afford. Why didn't anyone tell me? Jake's voice was low, controlled, but anger vibrated underneath every word. I would have come home. I would have done something. What could you have done from overseas? Grandma Rose asked gently. And Sarah didn't want to worry you. She kept saying you had enough to deal with. She wanted to handle it herself. By letting some rich kid destroy her wheelchair while 300 people watched and recorded it? Jake stood up abruptly, the chair scraping across the floor. Where's her room? Jake, please be gentle with her. She's not doing well. She barely talks anymore. She barely eats. It's like something broke inside her when that wheelchair broke. Jake walked down the hallway to Sarah's room, each step feeling heavier than the last. He knocked softly on the door. Sarah? It's Jake, I'm home. There was a long pause, then a voice so quiet he almost missed it. Come in. He opened the door and his heart broke. Sarah was lying on her bed, staring at the ceiling. She was thinner than in the photos she'd sent him. Her hair needed washing. The borrowed transport wheelchair was folded in the corner, and just seeing it, knowing it was there because some punk kid had destroyed her real chair, made Jake's blood boil. But he pushed the anger down. His sister needed him now. The anger could come later. Hey, little sis, he said, sitting on the edge of her bed. Surprise. I caught an early flight. Sarah turned her head to look at him, and Jake saw tears immediately spring to her eyes. You're really here? I'm really here. He reached out and took her hand. Grandma told me what happened. Why didn't you tell me, Sarah? The tears spilled over. Because there's nothing you could do. There's nothing anyone can do. Tyler's family owns this town. The school won't punish him. The police won't help us because we can't afford to fight his family in court. We can't even afford a new wheelchair. She laughed bitterly. Welcome home, right? This is what you came back to. Jake was quiet for a long moment, looking at his little sister who had survived so much already. Their parents' death. Learning to live with a disability. 3 years without him while he was deployed. And now this violation, this destruction, this injustice that no one seemed willing to address. Sarah, he said finally, can I see the videos? She hesitated, then pulled out her phone with shaking hands. Jake watched every single video. He watched Tyler push Sarah into the center of the cafeteria. He watched him kick her wheelchair once, twice, 3 times. He watched Madison recording with that cruel smile. He watched 300 students do absolutely nothing to help. When the videos ended, Jake stood up and walked to the window. Sarah recognized that posture. Their father had stood exactly like that when he was trying to control his anger. When he was thinking through a problem strategically instead of emotionally. Jake, I know you're mad, but please don't do anything stupid, Sarah said quietly. If you go after Tyler, you'll just get in trouble. His family will press charges against you, and you'll lose your military career. It's not worth it. Who said anything about going after Tyler? Jake turned back to her, and Sarah saw something in her brother's eyes that made her sit up. It wasn't rage. It was cold, calculated determination. I'm not going to touch him, Sarah. I'm going to do something much better. I'm going to make sure everyone sees exactly who Tyler Brooks really is. What do you mean? Jake pulled out his phone. I spent 3 years in military intelligence. I know how to run an operation, and that's what this is going to be. Operation Consequence. By the time I'm done, Tyler Brooks is going to wish he'd never even looked at you. By morning, Jake's video had been viewed over 1 million times. Sarah woke up to find her brother already at the kitchen table, fielding calls and emails on his laptop while Grandma Rose made breakfast with shaking hands. Channel 7. News wants an interview, Jake said without looking up. So does the Riverside Gazette, KMTV from the city, and about 15 other outlets. The State Disability Rights Organization wants to send representatives. Oh, and a lawyer from the ACLU called. She's interested in our case. Sarah wheeled herself to the table in the borrowed transport chair that Grandma Rose had to push everywhere. I don't understand. It's just a video. How did it spread so fast? Because people are tired of seeing rich kids get away with everything, Grandma Rose said quietly, setting down plates of scrambled eggs. And because your brother is very good at telling a story that makes people pay attention. Jake finally looked up from his laptop. It's not just the video. I spent half the night coordinating with advocacy groups, tagging influential accounts, making sure the right people saw it. Military veterans are sharing it because I'm one of them. Disability advocates are sharing it because it's about access and dignity. Parents are sharing it Because they're imagining their own kids in your situation. This isn't random, Sarah. This is strategic. Sarah's phone buzzed, then buzzed again, and again. Messages were flooding in from classmates. Some apologizing for not helping, others saying they were proud of her for speaking out. Even Emma Rodriguez sent a long message. I'm so sorry I didn't do more. I was scared. But I'm not scared anymore. Whatever you need, I'm here. By 10 a.m., a news van was parked outside their house. Then 2 vans. Then 3. Reporters were calling Grandma Rose's phone constantly. Jake handled them all with military efficiency, scheduling interviews and setting boundaries. We do this on our terms, he told Sarah. You don't have to talk to anyone you don't want to. But if you're willing, telling your story in your own words is powerful. It takes the narrative away from Tyler and Madison and gives it back to you. Sarah agreed to one interview with Channel 7 News, the most respected local station. The reporter, a woman named Angela Chen, sat across from Sarah in their small living room and asked gentle questions while the camera rolled. How did it feel when Tyler destroyed your wheelchair? Angela asked. Sarah took a deep breath. This was it. The chance to tell her side without fear. It felt like he was destroying more than just equipment. That wheelchair is my legs. It's my independence. Without it, I can't get to class, can't go anywhere by myself, can't live my life. And he broke it while everyone watched because he knew no one would stop him. That's what hurt the most, not just what he did, but that 300 people saw and nobody helped. What do you want to happen now? I want Tyler to face real consequences, not just a slap on the wrist because his family has money. I want the school to actually protect students instead of protecting donors. And I want other kids who are being bullied to know that they don't have to stay silent. Even when it feels like the system is against you, there are people who will fight for what's right. The interview aired at noon. By 1 p.m., it had been picked up by national news networks. Sarah Mitchell's story was no longer just a local issue. It was everywhere. And that's when everything started to change. The Department of Justice announced at 2 p.m. that they were opening an investigation into Riverside High School for possible violations of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The press release specifically mentioned failure to protect a student with disabilities from documented harassment and assault. At 3:00 p.m., the State Education Board announced their own investigation into the school's handling of the incident. At 4:00 p.m., Principal Hendricks was placed on administrative leave pending the investigations. And at 5:00 p.m., Tyler Brooks' world began to fall apart. The university that had offered Tyler a football scholarship released a statement. After reviewing recent events, we have decided to rescind our scholarship offer to Tyler Brooks. Our institution has a strict code of conduct, and we cannot in good conscience welcome a student whose actions contradict our values of respect, inclusion, and integrity. Sarah read the statement 3 times, barely able to believe it. Jake, they took away his scholarship. Good, Jake said simply. Actions have consequences. He's learning that now. But it wasn't just the scholarship. Tyler's teammates started posting on social media, distancing themselves from him. The captain of the football team wrote, "What Tyler did doesn't represent our team or our values. We don't stand with bullies." Local businesses that had Tyler's picture on their walls, hometown hero displays celebrating the quarterback, quietly took them down. The pizza place where his face had been painted on the window for 2 years painted over it overnight. Madison, sensing which way the wind was blowing, posted a tearful video apologizing and claiming she didn't know Tyler would go that far. She deleted all her previous posts, mocking Sarah. The comments on her apology video were brutal. You recorded it and cheered him on. Too late to pretend you're innocent. You're just as guilty as he is. By evening, Tyler Brooks had gone from untouchable golden boy to social pariah. Students who had laughed along with him now acted like they'd never been friends. People crossed the street to avoid him. His Instagram comments were flooded with thousands of messages condemning his actions. But Sarah didn't feel the satisfaction she'd expected. Watching Tyler's world crumble just made her feel tired. Is this what justice feels like? She asked Jake that night. Because it doesn't feel the way I thought it would. Jake sat beside her on the couch. Justice isn't always about feeling good. Sometimes it's just about making sure people face appropriate consequences for their choices. Tyler hurt you. He destroyed your property. He thought he could get away with it because of his family's money. Now he's learning he can't. That's justice even if it doesn't make you happy. The next morning, a black SUV pulled up in front of their house. Sarah watched through the window as Tyler Brooks got out of the back seat, flanked by both his parents. Tyler's father looked like a man whose entire empire was under threat. His mother couldn't meet anyone's eyes. And Tyler himself looked smaller somehow, like all the confidence had been drained out of him. Jake opened the door before they could knock. "Mr. and Mrs. Brooks, Tyler, please come in." They sat in the living room, an awkward silence filling the space. Tyler's father pulled out a folder thick with papers. His hands were shaking slightly. "Sarah, Mrs. Mitchell, Sergeant Mitchell," he began formally. "We're here to apologize and to make things right." Tyler cleared his throat. He was reading from a prepared statement, clearly written by lawyers. "Sarah, I want to apologize for my unacceptable behavior. My actions were cruel, thoughtless, and wrong. I destroyed your property and caused you significant emotional distress. I take full responsibility for what I did." Sarah stared at him. This wasn't the confident bully from the cafeteria. This was a scared teenager who just learned that actions have consequences. "Keep going," Jake said quietly from where he stood behind Sarah's borrowed chair. Tyler swallowed hard. "My family will pay for a new wheelchair. Top of the line, whatever you need. We'll also provide financial compensation for emotional distress and any other expenses you've incurred. I'll be transferring to a private school out of state and completing 1,000 hours of community service with disability advocacy organizations." Tyler's father opened the folder. "We're also establishing a $20,000 annual scholarship in Sarah's name for students with disabilities at Riverside High. The first payment will be made this week. Additionally, I'm stepping down from the school board effective immediately." He pulled out a check and set it on the coffee table. Sarah could see the amount. $50,000. "This is for the wheelchair, medical expenses, emotional distress, and to establish the scholarship fund," Mr. Brooks said. His voice was hollow. "We're also prepared to sign a legal agreement ensuring that neither my son nor any member of my family will have any contact with Sarah or her family going forward." Grandma Rose looked at the check, like it might explode. $50,000. More money than she'd see in 2 years of work. Enough to buy the best wheelchair available and have money left over for Sarah's college fund. But Sarah wasn't looking at the check. She was looking at Tyler, trying to see if his apology was real or just more lawyers and money-solving problems. "Why now?" she asked him directly. "Not when you were kicking my wheelchair. Not when the principal told you there would be consequences. Only now when the whole country is watching and you lost your scholarship and everyone hates you. Why do you care now?" Tyler's prepared statement didn't have an answer for that. He looked at his parents, then back at Sarah. "Because I didn't think it was real before. I thought I could that my dad would fix it like he always fixes things. I didn't understand that what I did to you was actually bad. I thought it was just, I don't know, a prank or something." "A prank?" Sarah's voice rose. "You destroyed my wheelchair. You humiliated me in front of everyone. You threatened my grandmother's job. That was a prank to you?" "No, I mean, I didn't think about it like that. You were just Sarah in the wheelchair. You weren't real to me. You were just someone I could push around because no one ever stopped me before." Tyler's voice cracked. "I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just trying to explain that I was wrong. Really wrong. And I'm sorry." Sarah studied his face. He looked genuinely miserable. But she'd seen too much, been through too much to simply accept an apology just because someone finally got caught. "I accept your apology," she said finally. "Not because you've earned my forgiveness, but because I'm choosing to move forward with my life. But understand something, Tyler. What you did to me, you've probably done to other people in different ways. Maybe not as obvious, but just as harmful. The real question is whether you'll actually change or whether you'll just learn to hide it better." Tyler nodded, tears in his eyes now. "I'll change. I promise I'll change." After the Brooks family left, Sarah sat staring at the check on the coffee table. $50,000. It felt like blood money, but it was also freedom. "A new wheelchair, security, options, what do you think?" she asked Jake. "Should we take it?" "That's your decision," Jake said. "But I'll tell you what I think. They're not offering this money out of kindness. They're offering it because the alternative is worse for them. Federal investigations, lawsuits, more bad publicity. This is damage control. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't take it. You deserve compensation for what happened. Use their money to build something better." Sarah thought about her parents, about what they would say. They'd always taught her that integrity mattered more than money, but they'd also taught her to be practical, to take care of herself and the people she loved. "Okay," she said, "we'll take it. But I want to do something with part of it." "What's that?" "I want to start a fund for other students who are being bullied, so they have resources to fight back. Legal help, counseling, whatever they need. Tyler's family money is going to help other kids like me." "That feels like real justice," Jake smiled, pride evident in his eyes. "That's perfect, little sis." "That's exactly right." The next day, Sarah deposited the check. The day after that, she went with Jake and Grandma Rose to a medical equipment specialist 2 hours away. They spent 4 hours choosing every detail of her new wheelchair, custom-fitted, lightweight, with features her old chair never had. It would take 3 weeks to build, but it would be worth the wait. On the drive home, Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from Principal Hendrix's replacement, Dr. Morrison. "Sarah, I'd like to meet with you and your family to discuss policy changes at Riverside High. We're implementing new anti-bullying protocols, mandatory disability awareness training for all staff and students, and clear procedures for handling discrimination complaints. I'd value your input on these changes." Sarah showed the message to Jake. "They want my input now. Where were they before?" "Sometimes it takes a crisis to force change," Jake said. "The question is whether you want to be part of that change or walk away." Sarah thought about all the students like her, the ones who were different, vulnerable, easy targets. She thought about Emma Rodriguez, who tried to speak up but had been too scared. She thought about the system that had failed her so completely. "I want to be part of it," she said. "Not for the school, but for the next kid who might need help. So maybe they won't have to go through what I went through." That night, Sarah sat at her desk and started writing, not a blog post or a social media rant, but a detailed proposal for how schools could better protect vulnerable students. She wrote about clear reporting procedures, about accountability for wealthy students, about the importance of believing victims. She wrote for hours, pouring everything she'd learned into words that might help someone else. When she finally finished, it was past midnight. Jake was still awake, sitting in the living room reviewing more messages and emails. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah said, wheeling into the room. "Of course. When you made that video, did you know it would blow up like this? Did you know it would change everything?" Jake was quiet for a moment. "Honestly, I had no idea. I just knew that what happened to you was wrong, and someone needed to say it loud enough that people couldn't ignore it. Sometimes that's all you can do. Tell the truth and trust that enough people will care. What if they hadn't cared? What if the video had just disappeared and nothing changed? Then we would have tried something else, and something else after that. Because giving up wasn't an option. Not for you, Sarah, never for you." Sarah felt tears welling up, but they were different from the tears she'd cried in the cafeteria. These weren't tears of humiliation or despair. These were tears of gratitude for a brother who'd traveled halfway around the world and immediately gone to war for her. "Thank you," she whispered, "for fighting for me when I couldn't fight for myself." Jake crossed the room and hugged her tightly. That's what family does. We fight for each other. Always. As Sarah got ready for bed that night, she thought about how much had changed in just a few days. Tyler Brooks had lost his scholarship, his reputation, his future at Riverside High. Principal Hendrix was gone. The school was implementing new policies. Her family had money in the bank for the first time in years. A new wheelchair was being built, but the biggest change was inside Sarah herself. She wasn't the scared, silent girl anymore. She'd found her voice with Jake's help and discovered that speaking truth to power could actually work. She pulled out her phone one more time and opened the social media app. Madison's apology video had been deleted, but Sarah's interview with Channel 7 News was still trending. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive. One comment made her stop scrolling. "I'm a sophomore at Riverside. I've been bullied all year by some seniors and I was afraid to tell anyone. But watching Sarah speak up gave me courage. I reported it today and the school actually listened this time. Thank you for being brave." Sarah read it 3 times, feeling something shift in her chest. This was why it mattered. Not just justice for herself, but hope for others. Her story had become bigger than just one destroyed wheelchair in one cafeteria. It had become a light for others in the darkness. She set down her phone and looked at the borrowed wheelchair in the corner. 3 more weeks until her new one arrived. 3 more weeks of being pushed around, of depending on others, of limited mobility, but she could handle 3 weeks. After everything she'd survived, 3 weeks was nothing. Tomorrow, she'd go back to Riverside High for the first time since the incident. People would stare. Some would apologize. Others would avoid her. Tyler would be gone, transferred to that private school. Madison would pretend Sarah didn't exist. But Sarah wouldn't be invisible anymore. She'd learned that staying quiet, trying not to make waves, trying to avoid trouble, none of that kept you safe. Sometimes the only way to be safe was to be loud. She closed her eyes, thinking of her parents. They'd be proud of her, she thought. Not because she'd gotten revenge or because she'd made Tyler suffer, but because she'd stood up for herself. Because she'd chosen to use her pain to help others. And tomorrow, when she rolled through those school doors in her borrowed chair with her head held high, she'd be showing every other bullied kid in Riverside that they didn't have to stay silent either. Jake was right. Actions had consequences. Tyler had learned that the hard way. But Sarah had learned something too. So did courage. The morning Sarah returned to Riverside High, she woke up early with butterflies in her stomach. It had been a week since the cafeteria incident, 5 days since Jake's video went viral, and 3 days since Tyler Brooks transferred to a private school 2 states away. Everything had changed, but Sarah still had to face the hallways where she'd been humiliated. "You don't have to go back yet," Grandma Rose said at breakfast, worry etched on her face. "You could do online school for a few weeks until your new wheelchair arrives." "No," Sarah said firmly. "If I hide now, it's like Tyler still wins. I need to show everyone and myself that I'm not going to disappear just because someone tried to break me." Jake drove her to school in his rental car. As they pulled into the parking lot, Sarah could see students staring through the windows. Word had spread that she was coming back today. The borrowed transport chair was in the trunk and Jake lifted it out with ease. "You ready for this?" he asked as he helped her transfer from the car to the chair. "No," Sarah admitted, "but I'm doing it anyway." Jake pushed the chair toward the entrance. The new principal, Dr. Morrison, was waiting by the front doors with Ms. Chen from the office. Dr. Morrison was a tall black woman in her 50s with kind eyes and an air of authority that Principal Hendricks had never possessed. "Sarah," she said warmly, "welcome back. I want you to know that things are different now. We've implemented new policies, and every single student and staff member has signed an acknowledgement that they understand the anti-bullying and anti-discrimination procedures. If anyone gives you trouble, anyone at all, you report it directly to me." "My door is always open. Thank you," Sarah said quietly. As Jake pushed her through the hallways toward her first class, something remarkable happened. Students stopped and made room, but not in the mocking way Tyler used to make them move. They stepped aside respectfully. Some nodded at her. A few said, "Welcome back," or "We're glad you're here." Emma Rodriguez appeared beside them, matching their pace. "Sarah, can I walk with you to English? I mean, if that's okay?" "Sure," Sarah said, surprised. Emma had never approached her before the cafeteria incident. "I'm really sorry I didn't do more that day," Emma said as they moved through the crowded hallway. "I tried to say something, but Brett threatened me and I froze, but that's not an excuse. "I should have been braver." "You did more than most people," Sarah pointed out. "You were the only one who said anything at all." "Yeah, well, I'm not staying quiet anymore. I've been talking to other students and a bunch of us want to start a disability awareness club. We were hoping you'd help lead it. You know, teach us about what it's really like, what we can do to make the school better." Sarah felt something warm spread through her chest. "I'd like that. I'd really like that." English class was strange. Her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had clearly been briefed on how to act. She didn't make a big deal about Sarah's return, didn't draw attention to her, just welcomed her back like any other student. But Sarah could feel eyes on her throughout the lesson. People were curious, maybe sympathetic, definitely aware of her in a way they hadn't been before. At lunch, Sarah expected to return to her corner table by the emergency exit. Instead, Emma and 5 other students approached her. "We were wondering if you'd sit with us," Emma asked, gesturing to a table near the windows. "We've been talking about the new club and we have so many ideas." Sarah looked at the table, the territory that used to belong to the popular kids. Tyler's old table. Now it was being reclaimed by students who actually wanted to make a difference. "Okay," Sarah said. "Yeah, I'd like that." As Jake pushed her toward the table, Sarah noticed Madison sitting alone on the far side of the cafeteria. Her usual entourage had abandoned her. She was scrolling through her phone, probably seeing that her follower count had dropped by thousands. When she glanced up and saw Sarah, she quickly looked away, her face flushing red. Sarah felt a moment of pity, then pushed it aside. Madison had choices that day in the cafeteria. She'd chosen cruelty and then chosen to broadcast that cruelty to the world. These were her consequences, just like Tyler's were his. Lunch was actually pleasant. The students at the table, Emma, Marcus from the debate team, Ashley from the art club, Jordan, who was in Sarah's history class, and 2 sophomores named Riley and Cameron, talked enthusiastically about their club ideas. We could do awareness campaigns, Ashley suggested, like posters showing how everyday things are harder for people with disabilities. And we should audit the school, Marcus added. Check if all the accessibility features actually work. I heard the elevator's been broken for weeks at a time before. We could bring in speakers, Jordan said. People with different disabilities to talk about their experiences. Sarah listened amazed. These students genuinely cared. They wanted to learn and do better. Tyler's assault had been horrible, but it had also woken people up. It had made them pay attention to things they'd ignored before. Jake watched from a table nearby where he'd been invited to sit with some teachers. He caught Sarah's eye and smiled. She smiled back, feeling something she hadn't felt in this cafeteria in a very long time. She felt like she belonged. The afternoon classes went smoothly until history, Sarah's last period. That's when things got complicated. Connor and Brett, Tyler's former friends, were in that class. They'd been lying low since the incident, trying not to draw attention to themselves. But as Sarah wheeled into the room with Jake pushing her chair, Connor stood up from his desk. "Sarah, can I talk to you for a second?" he asked quietly. The classroom went silent. Everyone was watching, waiting to see what would happen. Jake's body language shifted slightly, ready to intervene if needed. "It's okay," Sarah told Jake. Then to Connor, "What do you want?" Connor looked miserable. His face was pale and he had dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't been sleeping well. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. What we did, what Tyler did and what I helped him do by holding your chair, it was messed up. I've been thinking about it every day since it happened. I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it." Brett stood up too. He looked even worse than Connor, if that was possible. "I'm sorry too. We were wrong. We knew it was wrong when we were doing it, but we did it anyway because..." He trailed off. "Because Tyler's family had power, and you wanted to stay on his good side," Sarah finished for him. Brett nodded, shame clear on his face. "Yeah, that's exactly why. And that makes it worse, not better. We knew it was wrong, and we did it anyway to protect ourselves." Sarah looked at them both. These weren't the confident guys who'd flanked Tyler in the cafeteria. These were scared teenagers who'd made terrible choices and were now facing the reality of what they'd done. "Here's what I think," Sarah said slowly. "Sorry is just a word. What matters is what you do next. Tyler's gone, but there are other kids in this school who get bullied. Other kids who are different and vulnerable. You want to actually make things right. Stand up for them. Be the people you should have been in that cafeteria." Connor and Brett both nodded. "We will," Connor said. "I promise we will." "Then I accept your apology," Sarah said. "But you're right, it doesn't fix what happened. You have to live with that. I have to live with it too." After school, Dr. Morrison called Sarah, Jake, and Grandma Rose into her office. The room had been completely redecorated since Principal Hendrix's time. His golf trophies and pictures with local business leaders were gone. In their place were certificates about disability rights, educational equity, and inclusive education practices. "I wanted to update you on the changes we're implementing," Dr. Morrison said, pulling out a thick folder. "First, we've partnered with the State Disability Rights Office to conduct a full accessibility audit of the school. Everything from ramps to elevators to classroom layouts will be examined and improved where needed." She pulled out more documents. Second, we're implementing mandatory training for all staff and students. Not just a one-time assembly, but ongoing education about disability awareness, anti-bullying protocols, and bystander intervention. Third, we've established a new reporting system. Students can report bullying or discrimination anonymously through an online portal that goes directly to me and the school counselor. No more going through teachers or administrators who might be influenced by donors or board members. Jake leaned forward. "What about accountability? What happens if another student like Tyler tries something? We've adopted a zero-tolerance policy for physical assault and destruction of medical equipment, Dr. Morrison said firmly. It's written into the student handbook now. Any student who physically attacks another student or destroys their medical devices faces immediate expulsion, regardless of their family's status or donations to the school. No exceptions. And the school board? Grandma Rose asked. Are they supporting these changes? Dr. Morrison smiled slightly. The school board has been completely restructured. After Mr. Brooks resigned and the federal investigation began, 3 other members stepped down. The new board is committed to educational equity over donor relationships. Times are changing in Riverside. Before they left, Dr. Morrison pulled out one more paper. Sarah, I've been reviewing your academic records. Your grades are excellent despite everything you've been dealing with. Have you thought about college? Sometimes, Sarah admitted, but I didn't think it was realistic. We don't have money for college, and with my disability, I wasn't sure. Stop right there, Dr. Morrison interrupted gently. Your disability doesn't limit what you can achieve. Only people's ignorance does. And as for money, you should know that the Tyler Brooks Scholarship Fund your family established, you're eligible to apply for it. In fact, I think you'd be the perfect first recipient. Sarah stared at her. But I created that fund. It feels weird to accept money from it. You created it with money that was compensation for what happened to you, Dr. Morrison pointed out. Using it for your education honors the purpose of the fund, helping students with disabilities succeed. Think about it. In the car on the way home, Sarah was quiet, processing everything. The day had been overwhelming in the best way possible. Students who'd ignored her for years suddenly wanted to be her friend. Teachers treated her with respect and care. The school was actually changing in meaningful ways. It doesn't feel real, she said finally. A week ago, I was lying in my room wishing I could disappear. Now everyone wants to talk to me. The school is implementing new policies. Tyler's gone. It's too much, too fast. Change is like that sometimes, Jake said. It builds slowly, and then suddenly it all happens at once. But this isn't temporary, Sarah. These changes are real. You made them real by speaking up. That night, Sarah worked on her proposal for the Disability Awareness Club. She wrote about the importance of accessible design, about the difference between pity and empathy, about how to be a good ally. She wrote about her experiences not to complain but to educate,